This is a quick walk through my i3-menu script for Sway and i3 window managers. These are both window managers that are renowned for being keyboard driven, and that's great. I love them both and have used them for years. For frequently used operations, it's much more convenient to smash a keystroke instead of groping about with a mouse. That said, there are many less frequently used and consequently less easily memorized commands that I would like to use from time to time without necessarily breaking out the manuals, looking them up, and writing out a swaymsg command. My script i3-menu allows you to access these window manager commands from a menu. It also provides hints and reminders of how to do these operations using the keystrokes that you've customized in your configuration file. It could also help in learning Sway or i3 in the early days. This video is intended to give a brief introduction to how it's used and configured. It's not terribly convenient, but you can start i3-menu on the command line. I prefer to bind it to Shift menu. Either way, you get this window. Apart from the menu itself, note the text underneath the Sway menu title. It shows window equals foot, which indicates the window which had focus just before i3-menu started. In this case, it was foot. This means that all window operations invoked by this run of i3-menu will be applied to that window. So let's do something with i3-menu. For example, let's shift the foot window to the, well, I said right. Let's move it to the left by clicking Window, Move, and Left. Boom. I have enabled notifications, so I get a helpful reminder that I could have used Mod, Shift, and Right. Note that i3-menu closes after that one operation. So if we want to do another, we have to run it again. This time we'll go Window, Move, and Right. Again, it says Move Right is Mod, Shift, and Right. So that's an easy one that we probably all have memorized because it's used so often. Now we can lock i3-menu onto the screen because it can be helpful to do that. So let's just hit the lock button on i3-menu. And now every time we do an operation, I'll do the same ones again. Move it left and move it right. In this case, it doesn't close after one operation. It stays on the screen. In fact, no matter which screen I select, it'll stay there. So we can get rid of it now. So that's lock. So some other commands. Let's toggle a window between being floating and tiled. So again, we'll go over to our foot window and we'll select Window, Float, Toggle. And it actually tells us in the menu that it's Mod, Shift, and Space, but it also tells us in the notification up the top right here. So that's now a floating window, which I can sort of move around as normal. And now that I've learnt that it's Shift, Mod, and Space, I can toggle it back to being a tiled window. So we can move our target window to another workspace. So window, move to workspace this time. We'll say, let's move it over to workspace 9. Bang. And there it is on workspace 9, which is all well and good. We could have moved it to a different output, but since I only have one screen, I can't show you that. We can move it back to workspace 1, like so. We're back to where we were. Now you may have noticed that as I move the focus around to different windows, the transparency of the window changes, something that helps me a lot in knowing which window has focus. I do that in my script, i3-track previous focus, if you're interested. The URL is at the end of the video. Anyway, there's lots of other window operations to explore that you can muck around with. These are all the ones that I've got configured in my sway configuration. So split horizontal, split vertical, swap with previous, toggle transparency. There we go. That's now undone, that transparency, but every time I change focus, it moves back again. Anyway, lots of things you can play around in there. You may have also noticed that I have a very muted way bar. I don't want to be distracted by it, so the color, I've kept the colors drab unless it needs to alert me. Where's my cursor gone? Here we go. Let's pop a terminal up. So you'll notice at the moment everything is pretty muted. It's just that the current workspace button is in blue instead of that greeny grey, whatever it is. If we touch our sway configuration, in a second you'll see it comes up with an alert showing that I need to reload. So if I click left button on there, it'll actually reload the configuration. It goes back to being muted. Looking further on the way bar, this button down the bottom here showing the structure of our containers. So we've got an Emacs and a foot container. If I put, let's put another foot in there, you'll see we get a bit more information in our structure down the bottom here. Moving along, I've got bandwidth, usual stuff, bandwidth. This one's the number of packages. So it goes to an alert state when I get above 100 packages. I'm due for an update. It's my volume, usual thing. Turn volume up, turn volume down. That pop-up was something called WOB, W-O-B. Various monitors. This is my weather. It's a lovely 23 degrees with an easterly wind. The tooltip shows a bit more information, including sunrise, sunset, phase of the moon, blah, blah, blah. This one we already looked at. My clock and calendar. This is my VPN status. At the moment, we're not running a VPN. And this one down the end here shows the number of windows in the scratch pad. Tooltip shows that we've only got the one, which is drop down term, which is this guy that pops up and down here. I call it my drop down term. Anyway, back to i3-menu. Let's take another look at another. Let's pop the menu up. I'll pop them up here. The run menu. I've got loads of things in my run menu. For example, I can run my Emacs, Firefox, my calculator. Let me just put the lock on for a second. Let's put the calculator on. Bang, there it is. It's a RPN calculator I wrote a million years ago. We've got a clock, which is actually one of the only X11 apps that I run. Got a Bluetooth menu, loads of things. Everything that you want to run, you can put in your config file, and it's picked up in the i3 menu. Nothing very interesting. Toggle devices. That's another interesting app that I wrote, little Python thing. So this actually gets automatically scheduled and runs when I disconnect the power from the laptop. So it gives me the opportunity to very quickly go through and turn various things off that I might not want to run while I'm on battery. So it lets me conserve my battery power. Let's look at the next menu. It's workspace. These are all things that you might want to do to a workspace. You might want to jump to a different workspace. You might want to change its layout, move the workspace to a different output, take various screen dumps. This one's a bit pretty, so we can add some gaps to our workspace. And again, more gaps. So this is a bit different to i3. i3 doesn't have gaps unless you run the gaps fork of i3, but Sway has gaps built in. And we can reduce the gaps, or toggle gaps, and turn them on and off. So this is all just fun stuff. But I'll be blowed if I can remember the Sway message commands to do all of that. Anyway, let's move on. Let's get rid of that. And again, actually on those gaps commands, there's actually, I don't have a key binding for those commands. So it's nice to be able to have items in the menu, even though we don't have key bindings for it. So there's no key bindings for gaps, and they're not shown there. Whereas with workspace jumps, we've got the key binding mod 1, mod 2, etc., the usual thing. So that's another nice feature of i3-menu. Okay, so we'll put a couple of floaters up. I've got some quick ways of doing that. So we've got a couple of floaters up, and you might say, oh dear, it's a bit untidy. So let's look at the floaters menu. We can fit them all. Let's lock it. We can fit them all. So all the floaters are picked up and moved to a new location, which is a bit tidier. What else can we do with floaters? We can move them all to the scratch pad because they're untidy. So move them all to the scratch. You could move them all except the focus one, or you can toggle all of them to and from the scratch pad. So let's move them all over to the scratch pad. They've gone. We can see the scratch pad now has 3 things in it. And we can bring them back again. And there they are. When they're brought back, they're automatically fit into a nice space on the screen. So let's get rid of them again. Floaters toggle. I've done the wrong thing there, of course. Let's see. Floaters toggle. Oh, toggle focus. Toggle all floaters to from scratch pad. There we go. Gets rid of them again. Mod control / is the somewhat obscure keystroke for that operation. So it reminds you what it is, and so next time we can just press Control Mod \, does it for us without using the menu. So it's taught me something. So the outputs I've configured. I don't have any other outputs that I can show you, so we'll skip over the outputs, but you could move windows and workspaces there. Globals, lots of fun. These are generally things that, well, they often don't have keystroke mappings or keystroke bindings, so they can be a little bit hard to remember or cumbersome to type. So i3-menu gives a quick way of setting these. For example, if you want to change how the focus follows the mouse, you can have it always, you can have it no, or you can have it yes, which is the default. The default is marked with a star there. That's the default for sway. It's not the current setting, unfortunately. Haven't figured out how to do that, but it does allow you to change it on the fly while you're running without editing the configuration file and restarting. Lots of things you can do. Focus wrapping might be useful. I should probably enable that one of these days. Gaps again. This is a global gaps, whereas the other one was gaps on that workspace. Hide edge borders. I have a lock menu. Lots of different modes that I provide in my menu. It's actually a WOFI menu, so I can simply blank the display until the enter screen. So if I just want to turn the display off temporarily, I can lock it now. I'm about to go out, so just lock it. Safe is the default mode, and I've arranged it with my script. My lock, it's called. I've arranged things so that whenever you suspend or you first power on the system, it goes into safe mode, and the safe mode will automatically blank, lock, and eventually suspend after a certain period of idleness. So that's security that you want to have in case you pick up your laptop and go out the door forgetting to lock it. When it comes back on, it will be locked. At home mode, so it does automatic blanking but not locking. It will suspend after an hour just in case I go to bed and forget to turn it off. Downloading mode, so it automatically blanks and locks, but it doesn't suspend, so a long running download will just stay there, will just keep going. Desktop mode is the same as download mode. You're not concerned about a battery perhaps. Movie mode, you don't want blanking, locking or suspend, so all of those things. That's all provided in my mylock script. Other modes, other global operations. I've got my modes here. So I have a neat feature in my modes. I'll show you. If we go to move mode, which is a standard mode, but I've added a few things to it. First thing you see is that I've added a bit of a help. So this move mode will operate on the focused container. So I can go left, right, up, down, down or up. I've also got a keypad type thing so that we can move things around. We've got move it to workspace number 2, for example. So it's gone, but it's anyway. Lots of interesting things you can do with your move mode. What else? The other mode I've got is resize mode. So typically when you want to resize, actually this is better. This is a bit more interesting when I do it on a floating So we'll select the clock, select our mode, resize mode, and I've got this help, so if I hit plus, it just increases the size, minus decreases the size in both directions, left and right increases, up and down increases, decreases. We can do a number 3. A number 3 over here. We'll set it to 1/3 of the screen, which is a bit weird for a clock, but never mind. And number 4 will be 1/4, 1/9, whatever. We can also move, because often when you're resizing, you also want to move things around. So we'll move it to the top left using this keypad array again. So top left with the W, top center with the E, bottom left with the X, etc., etc. Probably enough of that. Let's get rid of him. Okay, so the last thing on i3 menu walkthrough is this little keyboard icon over here. So very often when you're using i3, you're thinking, oh, control, suppose we had a floating window and we had the focus there. And we're thinking to ourselves, actually, I want to move all the floats off to the scratch pad. And I think, if I remember correctly, it's mod control \, but I'm not quite sure. In that case, you might want to hit the keyboard button here, and you can type that keystroke in, control mod \, and it just tells you what it is. So instead of doing it, it tells you mod control \ is floaters, toggle all floaters to or from the scratch pad. Yeah, that's what I meant. That's what I wanted. So now you can confidently go control mod \, and off they go. Anyway, I call that a reverse lookup. So that's the end of the demonstration section of the video. I'll just mention some details of how i3-menu works and how it's configured in case you want to try it out for yourself. As I mentioned, i3-menu is written in my horrible Python. I'm not very good at it, but it does the job. And it requires Python 3 GObject, which is almost certainly installed on your system if you've got any GTK applications like meld, for example. Now, configuring i3-menu, unfortunately, nothing in life is free. And to get much out of i3-menu, you'll need to decorate your Sway i3 config file with some magic comments. The format's well documented in i3-menu --help. But in short, you add comments like the following before every key binding that you want i3-menu to know about. And here they are. So we've got a simple command, mod +d, which executes this is actually nonsense, I should have changed that. But mod D brings up my launcher, which is a Wofi launcher. And to document that keystroke, I would add this comment, which is 4 hashes and then category that I want the command to appear in. In this case, I want it to appear in the run category. And then the description of that command. You can also include items, as I mentioned earlier, that are not bound to a key, non-bind sim menu items. You add them with a dummy construct, dummy command like this. So we've got the 4 hashes again, and we've got the category. In this case, it's got a sub-menu, sticky sub-menu. This is the description of it. And this is the dummy entry. So it's a commented out bind sim dummy command. And the command is sticky toggle. So that's what you would normally type into swaymsg to make sticky toggle on that window. So the configurator is not too hard, but it's tedious, of course, because you've got to document all of these bind sims, and you've got to add any non-bind sim dummy menu items as well. So I've done a bit of the work for you by having i3-menu has a way to automate some of it for you. And it really depends on if your config is not too weird. So if you've done a lot of funky set $var type things in your config, or if you, there is a way to automate some of the tedious work of annotating your configuration, and i3-menu does it for you. So we'll just pop up another window here so that we can have a go at this. What you would normally do if you wanted to test our i3-menu out yourself without doing much work and without changing your own configuration, you would just use i3-menu with the -a or annotate option and create a new configuration. So that you could then point i3-menu at that new configuration and just see what it would do. And it would actually work. So it would actually pick up any of the key sims that it's managed to document on your behalf. For the sake of demonstration, my configuration is already annotated, of course. So I will take the standard one that ships with Sway, and I will annotate it as follows. So now I can do that. I can run i3-menu on that temporary config, and we'll see that it's a little bit smaller because there's not so much in the standard configuration as the launcher and the terminal. Then there's the various window commands. These are fairly standard. So this is what you would get with a totally virgin Sway. It's a little bit harder with i3 because i3, as I understand it, no longer ships with a standard configuration. It uses the wizard. So you could perhaps, as I did, use the wizard to create a minimal i3, or you can just use it on your own configuration and create a temporary one that you can play around with and check. If you're happy with that, if you think that that's a good thing going forward, you can always move that temporary configuration to your normal config, and then you can start adding annotations or editing annotations from that point on. So that would be a fairly minimal amount of work to get started, and hopefully it'll get you going fairly painlessly. Okay, that's it, folks. I hope you found something useful here. All my scripts and configs are at this URL, which I'll attempt to put on the YouTube page. And good luck with Sway and i3. All the best. Bye for now.